absolutely smashes again. So a big round of applause, please, for Mark, Mr. T. Thompson.
Yay!
Mr. T.
If you could all mute yourselves, please, except for Mark.
And the crowd went wild, and hopefully, yes, all was well with the world. Clive, I'm looking at your face. Fortunately, you've ended up as the person in the corner. Just give us a nod if you can hear me well. If it, you know, everything looks good to you, nods and thumbs up. Oh, Isabel's liking the hat. It's not newly bought, but yeah, I do like to have a range so that I can bring one out that you haven't seen for a while. I thought I was going to wear one of the winter hats, but actually it's too warm in my living room for the winter hats. I like to have a few hats available. Oh dear, I don't know if this is people in here trying to add me on Facebook whilst I'm doing this. This is the trouble with all these devices and technology. You're always worried you're going to get a phone call from your mum in the middle of this important step, but hopefully that won't happen. I have been a bit poorly. I'm going for the sympathy vote, but hopefully, you know, Friday night, everything's going to be all right. It's going to be right. It's going to be all right now, baby. That's for the kids from Fame fans in the audience, which is probably only people over the age of about 47. That'll be me and not many others. Right. I should start with a poem. Then I'll probably do some more poems, because that's what I do. Some say they don't do politics because it's a game of dirty tricks that powerful people try to fix. I guess that much is true. I too can see what's going on. The same sad singers sing the same sad songs, leaving no space for me and you to feel that we belong. But if that leaves us in a rage which makes us choose not to engage, we leave for them an empty stage to fill with tall tales too short on other points of view. So I beg you not to turn away. Please know your value to the fray. It'll be a dirtier game if you don't play, and maybe slightly fairer if you do. Thank you. Going out to all members of the Labour Party that have been struggling to cope with the joys of Starmer. Not that I'm going to make anything political. Oh, whoops. Poems and politics. Yeah, poems, politics. I need a third P, really, don't I? Passion. How about passion? How about I love to watch you? To let these eyes of mine drink in your entirety or focus on any one of your finer features. Yes, there are so many, it can be hard to choose. I love to touch you, to kiss and caress your every crevice, to hold you close and feel your heart's beat, to share your bed or just an adjoining seat, creating in you and me a yin and yang like proximity. I love to hear you moan to me or at me. No, really, in fact, my every atom spins in harmony as much with your admonishments as it does with your sweet nothings. I love to smell you and even taste you. And not only when you first step fresh, flush and flustered from your shower or bath, I do not forget that I love to do all of these, and yet I know not one can surpass that most primal pleasure that I get ever, which is when I make you laugh. Thank you. Okay, I'm sure you thought I was going somewhere else with that one, but yeah. Passions and politics. Passion, politics, and history is probably another thing that I do. I like history. I like looking at how history gives us context. Oh, I probably have to do this one. Kind of always have to do this one because I usually do it to introduce myself, but I went off in a completely different direction. So I'll do this one now. Yes, I am Mark Mr. T. Thompson from the Cultural Chameleon Press, which is me. And I made this, oh look, we've got graphics. Mixed messages from the Cultural Chameleon Press. Yes, the reason it's Cultural Chameleon Press is because of this poem, which goes almost exactly like this. My mum hates it when I do that line. I say that so often. Almost exactly like, I I'm a cultural chameleon, a lyrical social comedian. I felt I had no choice but to change my voice to appear average by mean, mode, or medium. I've studied hard to fit in and be cool for as long as I've been able to speak, although not to stand out at my school, I had to learn to talk common, not Latin or Greek. Me have to pick up my patois in conversation, but it's darker than me do too, because if you're not first generation, it might not come naturally to you. I've delved deep in all sides of my history, something I believe every person should do, because if where you come from's a mystery, can you be sure that your heading is true? So to stories of Romans and Boudica, I add Maroons, Garvey, and Shaka Zulu, and ensure the light of the Lady of the Lamp never obscures Mary's sequel from view. My biological heritage is both Black and British, and yet some really do seem to feel that my need to pay subs to both these cultural clubs is somehow less than real. Like some BNP or National Front, jumped up runt, son of an ain't not pale influenced, ignorant grunt who wants his soul to get back to our historically correct geographical homes. Hold on. Mine's split by over 5 hours of time. That's a little harder to straddle than a couple of travel card zones. Forget that this Patriot's Queen is Franco-German. The suggestion of this lunatic is the place I should feel most at home in is floating somewhere over the mid-Atlantic. One toe down in London town, the other in Kingston, poor rich. Better put me on the rack right now, cause my legs them just smooth and stretch. My left side is waiting for my breakfast scene, when my right side's just had me lunch. I guess if I'm confused, stuck in between, I could always just do brunch. But from that lofty spot, I could appreciate many artists who helped shape our current worldview. Great bards from Tough Gong to Billy Waggadagger, known as Marley and Shakespeare to you. The Windrush might appear through time's mystery as it answered the mother country's call. Those aboard unbowed by their history, each one with a right to stand proud and tall. Slave routes back to Africa will be visible too, a journey so many did not survive. Britannia's involvement is shameful, it's true, but I'm so proud that I am alive, for my DNA's very existence is a testimony to my ancestors' persistence and my parents' tolerance. Even when surrounded by overwhelming ignorance, it is a unique blend of Aboriginal British bloodlines and those of the invited immigrants. So yes, I am a cultural chameleon, a lyrical social comedian, and now, by choice, I change my voice to appear more than average by mean, mode, or mid. Thank you. That is why I don't have on the winter hat in becoming it. Start a break of sweat, yes? Sorry, for the Englishmen in the audience, I'm afraid it gets a little hot when one's performing, and yes, one does rather glow profusely.
Brilliant,
Okay.
brilliant.
That was Cultural Chameleon.
Flipping Ada.
Thank you kindly, thank you kindly.
Why?
Where are we going now? So I was saying about history and putting things in context. That's kind of me trying to put me into historical context. And there's been a lot going on. Been a lot going on this year. Some of the poems we're going to do are about things that have happened this year. Some of them are about things that I've written about this year. Some of them were about other things. But yeah, these next couple are about some of the things that happened this year. They came up in the Black Lives Matter event that I did, came up a lot. This one, the focus is on some bits of art that were acquired by a bloke called Elgin. Now, the way I understand it is if you go somewhere and you take something without getting the consent of the people that actually own it, well, in Newcastle, they call it twatting, taking without the owner's consent, and that's what you can do if you take a car. In Jamaica, we call it thief to my thief. But whichever place you're in, other than England, it would appear when you take something which isn't yours, you don't get to put your name on it. Elgin stole a bunch of marbles, friezes, beautiful art from the Parthenon, Yeah, he spoke to some Turkish people who happened to be in control of the country at the time, but he didn't ask any Greeks. Took them back to England, and they became known as the Elgin Marbles. There's one line in this, which is that the Greeks have lost their marbles. Them's the marbles we're talking about, and the fact is they might not be very happy about it. They say the Greeks have lost their marbles. Well, now they want them back. But it seems looting is only criminal when those looting are poor or black. And according to those who claim to be not all that far right, murder is only murder if you ain't a cop that's white. Yes, they can kneel upon a jugular and not offend their mates, but to kneel sporting an afro can cause heated debates about respect for your country that can't respect my kin. Oh, it's the land of the free unless you have black skin. So how can property be safe when the populace are not? When a brother cannot run without the fear of being shot by those who fucking job it was to protect and watch their backs against the aggressors and the terrors of white supremacist attacks. But how can they protect us as they scope us in their sights? How can they hope to serve us as they disregard our rights? The bricks and mortar are replaceable. Windows can be reglazed, but no earthbound soul can redraw the life that's been erased. So I'm sorry for your losses, but I just can't count their costs because I'm too busy writing eulogies for all the loved ones that we've lost. They say the Greeks have lost their marbles. Well, now they want them back. But it seems looting is only criminal when looters are poor or black. Thank you. And yes, those all kind of related to the Black Lives Matter and people talking about looting as a terrible thing and not realizing that the looting, which wasn't great, hey, if I owned a shop, I wouldn't like it. But the looting was a symptom. And the looting and the rioting, as Martin Luther King told us, riots are just the voice of the unheard. I said to badly paraphrasing. And the reason is we didn't want to watch. But this film cast the world as extras. No speaking role for us, just places on the sidewalk from where we could not talk, simply the silent witnesses to scenes that should not be seen. I said simply the silent witnesses to scenes that should not be seen, but they were. And now we are all haunted by the breathless last of the life that passed beneath the knee. Oh, to be clear, we're all sure this has happened before, but this crime we got to see, and this time the guilt just could not be any clearer, and in that moment we could not feel any nearer or any more powerless. And as the words of reason poured from round about us, we could tell that they fell on deaf ears, and the darker amongst us, we saw our darkest fears. Our ancestral mothers above us cried even more tears for yet another soul they would see too soon. But without doubt, what's truly marked this out as a chalk line for change is how reason went unheard by those that were there. They had spoken the words that we would have spoken if they had been us, if we had had the chance to cuss two bad words in his defense. But in fact, we know because their actions show all the words in the world would have made no impact on their indifference. This is why fists everywhere have been raised in defiance. Yes, raised in the air past many a tear-streaked cheek of those who now refuse to be so meek and mild. Man, our anger is wild, and like your shame, these words proclaim there's a chance our anger may never be tamed. But let me take a moment to breathe, because that's one privilege which I still have. Many have seen some try to shatter Malcolm and Dr. Martin's dreams under jackboots that wish to stomp on the green shoots that grow from the grassroots, who know these three words to be true: Black Lives matter. And as to what happens next, people, that's just up to you. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah,
Change of
boy.
air, change of tone. I was going to do some others that are, well, yeah, these injustices, like what we saw with George Floyd, similar things have been happening. This one's not actually that similar, and this was more local to those of us in the UK, and it's the story of Stephen Lawrence. And I wrote this, gosh, about 8 years ago. I don't change the words to make it more contemporary. I think I might do when we reach this was written on the 20th anniversary of the death of Stephen Lawrence. And I think I'll change the words on the 30th, but it's still written as 20 years ago, but that's just to explain the context. And it's called One of Us. 20 years ago, he is waiting for a bus, because 20 years ago, he is simply one of us. But 20 years ago, he comes under attack just because 20 years ago, this teenager is black. 20 years ago, he runs for his life because 20 years ago, racists sticking with a knife. 20 years ago, this firework is far too fleeting. And 20 years ago, his brave heart, it will stop beating. But just 20 years ago, when the officers arrive, yes, 20 years ago, this young man is still alive. But 20 years ago, no compassion is displayed when 20 years ago, none would administer first aid. 20 years ago, justice is not expected. 20 years ago, perpetrators are protected, and 20 years ago, the system is unfair. And 20 years ago, too many did not care. 20 years ago, we were right to doubt those wearing blue. And though this was 20 years ago, to this day, many still do. So 20 years have passed since he came under attack. Yes, 20 years have passed since he was killed for being black. Yes, 20 years ago since he waited for a bus. And 20 years ago since he was simply one of us. One of the things that I've had the fortune to do this year is some work around the New Cross fire. And there was a really powerful documentary that I was part of on Radio 4. I got a chance to write 4 pieces that were included in that. I'm not going to read all 4 for you. That would take too long. And I've got too many other things I want to share. But I am going to share 2 pieces, which is the first and the last one. If you don't know about the New Cross fire, look it up. Find the program that I did was called Lights Out from the Ashes of New Cross, which was on Radio 4 and was on the Seriously podcast as well. So if you want to look for that, it is all available online. This is the first piece and the last piece that I wrote that were part of this. It was a party which turned into a fire. 13 people died on the night. A further person died beyond that. This is kind of setting that up. Before the first spark or shard of broken glass, it was here. Its odor imperceptible, masked by the sweet treats and seasoned meats prepared to feed the throng. But even before the very first song, as furniture was moved aside to clear the floor for feet to fly, it was here. And as the revelers arrived, if you'd have looked deep into those pairs of bright young eyes, or seen the scene when their backsides were all first moved to a beat in time, perhaps against block walls, you would have been forgiven for struggling to see it. But still, in a heightened awareness of the exits for which they later have to hurry, it was here. And when the music played, over the thumping bass, it was almost inaudible, like those fine scratches in much loved ancient vinyl that you try so hard not to hear. But what is quite clear is it could be heard, because it was here. And it was fear. and it's still here. So that's the first piece in there. I'm going to just skip on to the last. Imagine that your child was one of the 14. Imagine what you might have thought after all that you'd seen. Something must be done. Something must be said. Someone must stand up before another child lies dead. None should choke upon the smoke, nor feel the fire's kiss. No one should be burying their offspring ripped from the world like this, left with little more than memories of the lives they barely got to live. Tell me, how could you hope to cope, let alone ever hope to forgive? Whoever was responsible, whoever lit the fuse, who can explain why those in power remain unmoved by those horrific views of a home reduced to charcoal and families drowning in tears, a community in agony with such justifiable fears? So tell them this wasn't ignited by racism, and they'll tell you, you just might be right. But few can believe the country's reaction would have been the same if those kids who died were white. And breathe. It's actually the first time I've done that as a performance rather than the recording for the radio, which is a very different thing. Need a little change, Gonna move this back so it's visible. I have the most outrageously oversized thing, which sort of is supposed to be like having an entire soundproof room squashed into the foam around my microphone. Whether it works, I have no idea. But let's imagine that this piece is called The Last Mic Stand. And it's quite fitting for this evening because I bet you've heard a lot of great verses, some rehearsed and some quite unplanned. But what if this was the final mic and this was the last mic's stand? Would you make a statement of silence? Could all that pressure be just too much? One last chance for minds to be open, one last heart and soul to be touched. Would you choose to reflect on great beauty or attempt to write just one last rhyme? Wrong. Attempt to write one last wrong. Tell a story with fabulous oratory or sing the most melodious song. How many more lost voices on this mic could we amplify? How many more top lessons with this mic could we teach? I guess I'd want it to go down swinging to test just how far we can make this lead reach. Could this cord bind the hands of oppression and save those drowning in seas of despair? Could it carry a message of hope to the isolated and let the abandoned know we still care? And if by some kind of cable austerity we find we've all just been mugged, those of us with the loudest voices could continue with this mic unplugged. You might think this is all just too ambitious, but I don't know where this mic's tail will stop. And yet I doubt I can keep up with it long enough to hear the final mic drop. I hope you hear many more great verses. I hope you write many more than you planned. I hope you share them all before your final mic is supported by your last mic's stand. So that was the last mic stand. I'll move that forward a bit. I've no idea how I'm doing for time here because I get a bit carried away and I've always got 16 more minutes worth of material that I'm actually supposed to share. Okay, there was one other thing that I wanted to do that I haven't done that's quite long. I'm going to do that and then I'll ask Clive if I need to shut up or not. I haven't performed this one either. There were lots of pictures around about migrants in the summer, particularly people coming over in boats. And there was some more this week when I heard that they were using drones to look at who was steering the boats of migrants across the English Channel. And they were going to convict those people who were steering it of having, basically, they were going to treat them as traffickers. Yeah. Pretty Patel. I've never met anybody I'd more like to bully than Priti Patel. Anywho, politics. I'm going to stick to the poetry, right? It's all poetry. It's just poetry. I was staring at a picture of off-white faces flushed with relief, bobbing above the luminous orange of life vests, hugging torsos, being lifted off a dinghy in the English Channel, when I saw him staring back at me from the darkest corner of my screen, a face I knew I'd seen before, the recognition unmistakable despite the context. He looked shocked, as if the scene around him was alien, and I knew immediately that he was one of them that I'd heard about, that I'd heard so much about before, the lucky beggars. But he wasn't one of those in the boat, although they are far luckier than many who never escaped war-torn countries to build again. And some of them are far luckier than those who died trying to cross a border on land or water to reach a land of promises that it seems are all too often written into the dampest of salty sands just before a breaking wave. No, he was lucky because he was me, or at least my reflection. For the truly lucky ones are those like most of you and me who got to see this picture on our phones in our homes from the position of a socially distanced media viewer in the relative safety and comparatively good health and even wealth when placed beside those fleeing by the sea. We are the lucky beggars. And to those of us who would today pull the drawbridge up and watch souls drown in a moat around the hunks of rock that we make our castle of, I say this: you have done little or nothing to deserve the luck you now enjoy. And luck rarely lasts forever. One day, maybe surprisingly soon, it may be you or yours scrambling onto new shores, searching in desperation for home to be met by love or hostility, hard baked into the environment. What you would wish for them is what you must wish for all. If you would wish to claim any interest in justice at all, for there really is just us few who they or those who follow them can ever look up to deliver it. And so if, when you see your face, you want to see no shame, look into the eyes of those who run here as if they were your own. And before you turn away, then decide what's fair. Thank you. Still a little bit rough around the edges, that one, but yeah, there's a lot in it. I'm assuming I'm out of time, so I'm thinking I'll do one dancey kind of upbeat, cheerful one to end with.
Do as many as you like, Mark.
Mark, do as many as you like.
What have I got? On here. Nothing screaming. Where's my list? Oh, always write a list. Yeah, that's in the bone here. There's only one. Yeah, so it's one more. Then I'll do my cheerful dancing poem to finish with. This one is unusual. I'm getting paid to write the poems. Is really nice. Doesn't happen very often. This one was for Crisis. I've done a load of work for Crisis this year. Been really, really lucky. And I would urge anybody who has a few quid in their pocket after you've donated to support this wonderful evening to try and see if you can find some pennies to throw towards Crisis. They're doing an amazing work. And they asked me to write a poem for World Homelessness Day, which was also World Mental Health Day, which means it was just a day of all sorts of things going on. But yes, poem, be time to go home. This one hasn't really got a title. I kind of called it Crisis Poem, and it is about the crisis of homelessness. We are returning to work, to school, to something that looks a bit more like normal. We were. Leaving the safe places where we have stayed, going back to the games and the sports we've not played. But for some, the lockdown was safer by far. It meant not bedding down in the back of a car. For many, the return is something we fear as the loneliness of homelessness in winter draws near. The future's uncertain. that much all can see. Too many can only dream of holding their own front door key. Instead, surfing sofas, stuck in tents or huddled in doorways at night, leaves souls screaming this just isn't right. Because now, as we stand here mentally pushed to the brink, it's unacceptable some can only hand wash in a public sink. Homelessness has avoidable costs none of us can afford, and these problems just won't go away if ignored. We've seen what can be done when we work together. We can find the space to offer everyone shelter, somewhere to recover, rebuild, and stand tall as we strive to find decent homes for all. Okay. I've given you quite a hard time. Poets will do that to you. Just checking there isn't anything desperately hiding that I meant to. I think I've done the big bits that I'd never done before. So thanks for being my guinea pigs. Oh, I haven't done any of the things to do with lockdown. NHS, that one, this one, that one. 5 o'clock. Where's that one gone? I haven't done that for a while. Yeah, somebody said at one point this evening, it's always 5 o'clock somewhere in the world. I know that's related to drinks. And this is not things to do with lockdown. This is lockdown number 1, and this was how I felt about those wonderful briefings at 5 o'clock, or at least that's where we start from. At 5 o'clock, the Tories dribble poison in my ears, trying hard to hide their perma-smirks. They giggle at our fears, trumpeting as triumphs all the targets they've not met. They twist the truth like Wicker Man in the hope we'll all forget that they failed to act in time to protect our brave front line. And as they watched the death toll climb while they told us we were fine, but we weren't, and we're not, and some of us won't ever be again. But at 5 o'clock, they're back with another pack of liars, and at 5, they all just talk numbers as yet another family cries because their loved ones weren't protected and our country wasn't led. And so to this indiscriminate killer, our migrants and our working class are fed. Seems our elders are expendable as they're worth less than they cost, but it's our dignity and our history that along with them are lost. They may remember victory in Europe like it was yesterday, but when Boris was balancing his budget, that just didn't hold much sway, because like Kitchener before him, he only counts his flock by the head. No understanding of the grief and the suffering of all those thousands dead, for we are just factory fodder. We bleed to grease the wheels of industry, I'm told. But to the Tories, our cities are not people. They're just filled with an ethnic urban herd. At 5 o'clock, the Tories dribble poison in my ears, trying hard to hide their perma-smirks. They giggle at our fears, trumpeting as triumphs all the targets they've not met. They twist the truth like Wicker Man in the hope we'll all forget that they failed to act in time to protect our brave front line, and they watched the death toll climb while they told us we were fine, but we weren't, and we're not, and some of us won't ever be again. Right, that's it. When you get this tired, do the last one to cheer us up. Land of hopeless stories. Yeah, I can go with that one. It's making me think of another one, but no. Last one. This one's called Dancing for Dancing's Sake. As a kid, I did not dance, but I couldn't tell you quite why. It seemed a very parental passion that had brought me into existence had somehow passed me by. Perhaps I was a tad too sad or even too physically shy, a gangly, bespectacled, curly-headed, goofy lad who far too rarely got to see his dad. My mum, she tried to persuade me. She showed me just how to wiggle my hips, but rhythm by me had been mislaid, you see, unless I was flapping my lips. It wasn't that it didn't hold my interest. I even attended the very saddest dance class. Their MJ impressions were far from the best or the baddest. End result, I still would not wiggle my arse. Popping, locking and breaking were the top moves by the time I moved up to big school, but shaking my thing to beloved hip-hop grooves left me aching and looking more foolish than cool. Of the brown-skinned guys in my form, at least half could spin on their head to windmill and Caterpillar was considered the norm, but me, I was just a non-dancing son of a dread. Until I left my little South London hood and found myself up in Geordie land, where the dancing, which passed for good, was a straight and an rhythmic brand. Suddenly, I was the one with great rhythm. All my moves looked remarkably smooth. There were girls who wanted me to dance with them, which did make my confidence start to improve. Since that day, no one can stop me. I walk in and head straight for the floor. But enthusiasm, no one can top me. But my spinning maneuvers have left me dizzy and sore. I never did learn how to break dance. Man, I still can't moonwalk or body pop. But I've learned, man, to dance for dancing's sake, and vow now, while I can, not to stop. And that was way more than 20 minutes. So those of you that I've kept up, I've got to apologise to my wife. I didn't do those ones. Oh yeah, they knew there was something I was going to remember. But yeah, you know what? You have to leave them wanting more. And if I don't stop now, that really won't happen.
It will.
It's been a great night. It's been a great night. And
fantastic set, man. Wow.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. My name is Mark Mr. T. Thompson. You can find me on Instagram. I am Mark T 1973, which seemed like a really good idea when I started it. Now it's telling everybody I'm an old git. Love going out to Sarah. Thanks for that, Gaza. So yeah, on our Instagram it's Mark T 1973. Mark Mr. T Thompson on Facebook. If you've got some money, sling some in the pot. These guys here are doing amazing work.
Yeah.
And Oooh Beehive is one of the best. It seems to be the biggest slam and one of the best open mic nights going on at the moment. I also help run an open mic night called Poetry from the Grassroots with Steve the Same. All the way from New Zealand, we're importing Ricky the Most Livermore. Never seen Ricky, you're in for an absolute treat.
She's
If you've never
awesome.
seen Ricky, you're in for an even bigger treat because they are just one of the most awesome people on the planet, so much so that I keep in contact with them even on the other side. They also run a great show which is on almost every Sunday morning. It is on this Sunday, and you can find that under Your Place Events on Facebook.